My name is Dr. John Diamond, and I am here with Judge Patricia McCullough, who is running for the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and I'd like to welcome you to the show today.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for letting me be here with you.
Absolutely. So I've been doing a lot of reading up on you and your past history. You got a great track record.
Thank you.
I was reading your palm card here, and it says that you're running because the Constitution still matters. Now, we understand that America's constitutional republic is founded on the Constitution. Why do you use the word still matters?
Because we are in a constitutional crisis.
Amen.
And we have a very critical upcoming election for one seat on the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, the birthplace of the one nation under God. Mm-hmm. And this is going to impact the future of Pennsylvania, and as Pennsylvania goes, so goes the nation. So I believe we need someone who has the courage and the conviction to uphold the Constitution as written. I've been threatened for my opinions. I've been subject to false, malicious political attack by the party elite. Even though they say I'm such a good judge, they don't want to lose me on the Commonwealth Court. But you have to remember, we work for we the people. And our job is to uphold their constitutional rights. And so the cost may be high to someone sitting in this seat,
right,
but the cost of losing our sacred rights and liberties as a nation is much higher.
Sure.
So we need someone who's going to uphold the Constitution no matter what, and that's what I've done.
You cite some examples of when the Constitution was either ignored or just overlooked completely. Give us, in your experience, give us some examples of that.
I can give you examples of constitutional issues that came before me. Actually, I've been on the bench in this court as an appellate judge for over 12 years.
Wow.
But I'm only going to talk about the last 2 years because there have been plenty since then.
Right.
Last year alone, I upheld the Second Amendment 4 different times. Wrote the majority opinions, and 3 of those was a single judge presiding over one of them. 4 different times. Election integrity, that seems to be like the most important issue to the people right now. And last year, in the last 2 years, I was part of a small majority that declared the mail-in ballot law to be unconstitutional, declared that the governor exceeded his limitations on the mandates for COVID restrictions. I also entered an opinion saying that healthcare workers who were fired because they chose to wear a mask instead of take a COVID vaccine should not lose their unemployment compensation benefits. Why is that? Because they were exercising, in my opinion, they were exercising their medical right to self-determination. And while you have to continue to promote the interest of the employer in protecting the health of the patients, when you assert a religious exemption, you're allowed to wear a mask instead of have something injected into your body. And so my opinion was that if they chose to exercise their medical right to self-determination in not taking that shot, that's not willful misconduct. Another case I presided over as the trial judge because our court is unlike any other court in the nation, the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania. We have appellate and original jurisdiction, so we sit as trial judges on statewide matters involving the Senate, the House, congressional redistricting, elections, and much more. And on this case, I was the trial judge for congressional redistricting map trial.
Okay.
Now, once the governor vetoed the legislator's map, which they had approved, it had to come into court. And there were probably 13 other parties that were trying to submit maps, and we had to review those. I had to have a trial condensed. But in the end, I rendered a 220-page opinion saying that in the proper exercise of judicial restraint, since the legislature has the constitutional authority to draw the map, and even though the governor is allowed to veto the map,
right,
because the governor's expert witness got on the stand under oath and said that the legislator's map was a good map. It was a constitutional map. It was one of her top picks, just not the first one. So under those circumstances, I said, in the proper exercise of judicial restraint, we need to pick the legislator's map. And with all due respect, that is not what happened on appeal. A different map was chosen by the Supreme Court on the basis that it was, for many reasons, but on the basis that it was most similar to the map that they had drawn by a professor several years before. Changed the dynamics of the redistricting map, but that was my opinion. Another case, I was the only judge in 2020 to order the governor to stop certifying the presidential congressional election.
Right.
And that was a case filed by Congressman Mike Kelly from this area. He was challenging the certification based on the unconstitutionality of the mail-in ballot law. Asked for a preliminary injunction. It was all in Thanksgiving week, very condensed time frame. And he asked for a preliminary injunction. I scheduled a hearing for that week. And I had a call with the parties, and we were talking about what had certification started, and I got the impression that it had started. That night, there was a press release issued that said, we've now certified the presidential and vice presidential elections. Well, as you can imagine, the next morning, the petitioner's attorney filed then for an emergency injunction, saying that was an attempt to get around the court. They were still violating the mail-in ballot law. Mm-hmm. And on the basis of that, they hadn't totally certified the election. Right. They had not turned the materials into the national offices. And so on that basis, and because I had a hearing scheduled, I ordered the governor to stop certifying the map. I was threatened by people across the country for that. You know, and they were saying disenfranchising the vote, and that's so false. Because there was no remedy that I hadn't even had the hearing yet, so there was no remedy imposed. But what the people don't realize sometimes, they're entitled to an election that is fair. Right. And so in protecting their election integrity, I entered that order. Well, right away they went to the Supreme Court to vacate the emergency injunction, and the Supreme Court vacated my order and canceled the hearing. Right. So that was the end of that case. But then, like I said, last year, a small majority of us entered an opinion saying the mail-in ballot law was unconstitutional. Right. On appeal, that was not upheld. So the law of the land, with all due respect to the Supreme Court, they get the last word. So the mail-in ballot law is a lawful law. Now there's just so many questions on how you have to follow it, like dating provisions and many others. But those are just some of the examples among many cases that come into the court that I am sitting on now.
Well, that's good. And I noticed a lot of your promotional materials actually stress that you're the only appellate court judge that's running, the only one with that experience. Why does that matter?
Well, I'm the only one that's an appellate court judge on the Republican ticket. Okay. And I'm the only one who's running as an appellate court judge with over 12 years of experience overall. And that is a critical point. The Supreme Court is the highest appellate court in Pennsylvania. Yep. And there's a standard of review that's applied by an appellate court. That's what I've been doing for over 12 years, applying the appellate standard of review. We review the trial court's decisions. We review the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania, the People's Court. We review the trial courts, the state agencies, the local agencies' decisions. Our opinions form the basis of review for the Supreme Court. So it's critical. I mean, because of that experience, and because I also had served as a trial court judge when I was appointed by the governor and the state senate in 2005 to Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas. I was a practicing attorney for 25 years in private, corporate, and government sectors. That experience, particularly the 12 years as an appellate court judge, upholding the constitutional rights of the people, enables me to be ready to hit the ground running on day one in the Supreme Court.
Well, good. And as many of your followers probably know, that we have the legislative, executive, and judicial branch, and all of them take an oath to support and defend the Constitution. Why do you feel that the position of judge is so important, and how would you apply that?
Well, I take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Pennsylvania. I have to abide by my oath and be fair and impartial and uphold the rule of law, and that's what I've done. And if we don't have judges that do that, and if we change what the Constitution says, what the framers wrote, I had a gentleman say to me recently, well, I'm not so big on all the constitutional rights. And I said, really? Do you like the Second Amendment? Because that's very important to me. And I said, well, you know, if you lose one, you can lose them all. It's not a smorgasbord. Right. It's one document. And if you can start tweaking with that document, then you can change it totally.
That's a very good point. That's a very good illustration. I like the way you articulated that. So why do you feel it's so important that you take a stand for the people?
Well, because I work for the people.
Very good point.
I work for the people, and I appreciate the privilege to be able to do that. So I have taken a stand in issues in 2005 when the controversial pay raise was enacted. I was a sitting trial court judge, and I did not take the pay raise. They sent a check after that, after it was deemed to be lawful, which it has now been. I returned that money, and for the first 10 years on this court, I sent money back to the state treasurer until it got to around $10,000. And then I decided I'm giving the money to the programs I do to help the improvement of the courts, which is for veterans, disabled, youth at risk, people battling drug addiction, working on human trafficking. I also don't take money from lawyers and lobbyists when I'm running, and it makes it more challenging. But I feel like I want the people to know that no matter who their lawyer is or who the parties are in front of me, that I only have certain issues on my plate, and that is the Constitution, the law before me, and the parties who are seeking justice. So I feel it's very important to take a stand for the people, knowing that that's who I work for. When I ran for retention, stood for retention, everyone said, well, you don't need to go out for this now. And I said, well, actually, we're not allowed to go talk to the people any other time in a political context, right, except if we're running. And I said, I want to hear what they think. Not that I'm going to change my rulings on the Constitution, but I want to hear what they think. And they have every right to tell me. So
yeah, that's a very good point. I'm glad to see that you're not, being bought out by anybody else. There's a lot of integrity in that statement, and I appreciate that.
Just because I work for the people.
Very good.
Thank you.
So what would you say to the voters who are going to the polls here for the primaries on May 16th?
Well, I would say that you have to vote like your future depends on it, because it does. The lives of our children and our children's children are on the line. They are at stake in this election. So please, I ask you to join me on May 16th. Help me to continue to uphold our Constitution, your constitutional rights and liberties, and elect me to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Together, let's keep our nation strong and its birthplace, the holy experiment, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And I thank you so much, and God bless you. And thank you, Dr. Diamond.
Well, thank you very much. I know our founders really used the word posterity many times in their writings, and when you said that, that really spoke to me, because you're really carrying the spirit from the founders over, that you not only care just about us and now, but our children and our grandchildren. So I appreciate all you're doing for Pennsylvania and for the country, and God bless.
Thank you. God bless you too. Thank you.